Hello, it's his Volk. Time to enjoy card making with me. Today I'm sharing more than 25 card sketches that I've created with the QUILT Dies from AlinaCraft store. It is so much fun to create patterns with these geometric basic shapes. The nice thing is that you can use these dies for any kind of pattern paper, plain paper or self-made or self-stamped paper. A QUILT blanket made of fabric also has many colors and no two designs are the same. Color combinations and patterns are a matter of taste, so get out what you like. QUILT cards are suitable for any occasion, for men and for women or children, depending on how you finish the card. For some of my examples I've used these 6x6 pattern paper packs from AlinaCraft. Beautiful colors and color combinations on these papers. There are always two sheets of the same pattern, but any kind of paper can be used for this technique. You can find the links in the description below the video. Make sure to also watch the previous video I made, showing my 14 tips for making cards using the QUILT shape dies. You won't regret that. As I said, I will give you lots of examples that you can copy and use with your own paper and colors. So keep this video as a reference to fall back on when you lack inspiration. To make things easier for myself and hopefully easier for you, I have die cut all the shapes in different colors. Especially the triangles are sometimes hard to tell apart, because the sizes don't differ much. With these shapes I will now show you some card examples. Don't fast forward the video too much, I might be mentioning some tips while showing them. For my card sketches I've taken two card sizes. One is an A6 piece of paper measuring 10.5 by 14.8 cm. The other is a square card of 13.5 cm. And now I have to say that for most of the A6 examples that I will be showing later, a size of 15 cm would be more appropriate. However, you can also make and adapt a lot of patterns for other card sizes, like the American card sizes or slimline cards. Then I will now start showing you the sketches. I've laid out my sketch samples loosely by hand, so they are sometimes crooked. But you can probably see through that, or turn a blind eye for that. I hope it will give you some ideas. For this first card I used both triangles. I cut out the largest size out of white paper and the smallest size out of patterned paper. I did the same for the diamond shapes. I first glued the shapes together and then braced them with 3D foam on the card panel. As a variation, you could also glue the largest shape directly onto the panel and then glue the smaller shape on top of that using 3D foam squares, or only use one shape. In this way, each card looks different every time. And with a different text in a different size or color, you can achieve a completely different look. I used light blue paper as a base card, which I ink blended darker at the top before gluing the shapes on. Here you can see how they were glued on using 3D foam. And for the envelope I used the die cut shapes together. This way the envelope doesn't get too thick and doesn't need too many postage. You can also use a pattern like this on a card. I cut off any excess paper that was sticking over the edge. I used the metal textures paper for this design and also for the next one. Here I have a square card base of 13.5 cm. On top of that I have 4 squares of the largest size in patterned paper, then another 4 squares of white paper, and then triangular shapes that fit together. You can play with the shapes again. Glue them raised or flat, all face to the same side, or turned around to the other side. Instead of the triangles, you can also stick cute stamped pictures on this card, or other die cut shapes. I glued the text on at an angle, on the advice of my husband. I think it's a real man card. Here you can see how I assembled this card. I put the shapes together as an inlay. A white border outside, a colored shape inside. I don't fill everything up now, but you can easily see which part the card is made out of. In the middle I have placed 2 banner strips. On top of that I glued a die cut number that is made of using these beautiful big dies that I show you now so you can see the size of them. I like them a lot. There are also RD and ND, so you can make third and second, etc. I glued some gems on the holes and the shapes for this man card. You can stick all kinds of pictures or embellishments in the middle here, of course. Die cuts like this heart, for example. Colored stamps, but also dry embossing works very well here. Use the things you have in your stash and surprise yourself being able to make so many different designs. I'll stick with this square sketch for a while and now focus on the triangles around it. The small triangles add up to the same size as one larger one. Make sure you take the right triangle. As you see, the green one is slightly bigger. They are very close together in size. In this way you can fill the pattern completely. I'll show you what it looks like when it's flipped over. On the right side and bottom I have the right angle pointing outward, and on the left and top I have the right angle pointing inward. On the left I haven't even divided the shape, and so you see 4 different possibilities. A 5th possibility that I am not showing is to replace even the small squares that are on the corners with 2 triangles. The envelope speaks for itself, but of course a pattern like this can also be used on a card. Also on a slimline card, for example. You cut off what sticks out. There's a plain straight piece of patterned paper underneath as a contrast and to bring the whole picture together. Here's another variation for the envelope. In my video with the 14 QUILT die tips, you can see how to glue the dies straight to the paper. For this lovely card I'm showing that a smaller QUILT pattern can also be beautiful on a larger size card. Here the square with the shapes is 10 cm and the panel underneath is 10.5 on a 13.5 cm card. Now you can see how I build up the pattern. And so, of course, instead of the corners, you can also fill the other squares. An extra border or a large panel underneath makes it look bigger. When you slide the squares close together, you can also glue long borders around them. Or you can slide the squares wide apart and then stick other shapes on them, like these leaves, for example. Each size has its own style. You could also place the hexagons on top. I could puzzle and play with this for hours. Nothing is too crazy. This shapes fit on everything. And how about the heart die cut? This one would go perfectly with it too. This way you could decorate the envelope using the leaves, if you like. Let's move on to another square card. On this, 4 large squares fit very nicely. And on top of that, the same smaller size squares, but also the same squares that a smaller size was cut out of. I switched the shapes for a moment so that it's mirrored on both sides. And on top of this again, fit even the smaller squares. Twisted is nice too. And instead of the small squares, you can also put other shapes on top. A text stamp will also fit in nicely. I'm sure this will look very pretty with patterned paper, or metallic paper, or homemade paper, or holographic paper. Everything can fit well. Now let's try it if we turn it a quarter turn around. the squares lie diagonally on the card. For this you do need to draw pencil lines first. I suggest this horizontally, vertically and diagonally, drawing lines that you can align to. Erase these lines after you have glued the shapes on and the glue is dry. Take a look to see how I vary further on this idea. Now let's try it with triangles on a square card. When you glue the triangles close together, the card is a bit big for these dies. But when you put a colored border underneath it, it will look quite different. And if you turn the shapes in a different direction, it also gives another look. Again, I use a text stamp that was stamped on a rectangular die cut shape. Or maybe on a heart shape. I found a sketch shape here that doesn't quite fit the 13.5 cm card, but I want to show it anyway. You may be able to cut off the edges that hang over it, or make a larger card of 15.5 cm in this case. This is the sketch I also showed for the card I made at the previous video, where I shared tips and tricks for working with these dies. Click on the link in the description or click at the top right on the info button to go to that video. This is a favorite sketch of mine that can be varied like you see, filling up different spaces. Here you actually see the same sketch again, but you see, when I put it down without filled in shapes, or filled in shapes in other places, then the card looks completely different. This also applies to the type of paper you use. When finishing off such a card, you can also use glitters or gems. I used glossy accents on the lips for this card. It will give it some dimension and shine. For this sketch, I lay out the shapes diagonally, double on top of each other. To give the card some extra color and depth, I glued matching patterned paper underneath. The text can also be added to the card in different ways. And of course, you can also use this pattern for a square card. You can also rotate the pattern so that it's vertical instead of diagonal. Here's a quick look at how I decorated my envelope, also with an extra strip of patterned paper underneath. Here's an example of a vertical sketch, but with the diamond shapes added. On a 15 cm high card. This fits exactly. Fill up the gaps with bigger triangles in the middle and the smaller triangles on the edges. Here's a card I used this sketch for. Both under the die cuts and on the die cuts I stamped with the background stamp. If I have time for it, I will try to make an instruction video for that. Now for a variation on the previous card. For this I take the smallest squares and the inner triangles. The two small squares fit in with this. If you like to fill up the panel, you can add the same triangles to the other side as well. I also like this next pattern a lot, even if you would leave out some of the diamonds. The squares can be glued close together or at a distance from each other. What sticks out, you just cut off. It has a bit of the idea of a winter sweater, don't you think? It makes the background for any kind of card. And if you think it's too plain, just add the inlay die cuts to it. Another C6 card with this time the small squares. You can take just the large size or both sides in or stacked on top of each other. Here the large triangles fit. These triangles also fit to the largest square. I fill the rest of the card with the long stripes. You can have a text or image in the middle. How about another die cut in the middle? Again, I take the heart as an example. It also fits well with other banners or shapes above or below this pattern, and the text fits just fine there. While I was playing with the long strips, I filled them up for this card. Nice as a background, I think. And you can do endless variations with it. Stripes all the same, or alternating, one on top of the other, empty, etc. Stripes all close together, or a little bit apart. Or only the lower part with stripes and the upper part empty. What do you think if I glue a die cut heart on top of it? Or maybe die cut the shape out of it? I'm going to continue with another square card with these strips. The size I'm still using as an example is 13.5 cm square, that's 5.3 inches tall. This card I put full of banners as if it were a wall. It reminds me of a card I made before with banner strips that I die cut using the dies that came with the AlinaCraft text stamps. Click on the link in the top right corner to see that one. The link is in the description of my video too. Sticking these long strips on an adhesive sheet and adding glitters to the gaps is very nice in such a card. You can see that I alternate long and short shapes, but that the pattern repeats itself. For this square card I first laid out 4 large squares and on top of them all kinds of banner strips. Nothing is too crazy, eh? I personally would choose to combine 2 variations with each other instead of 4 different ones, but you get the idea, it's for the example. I will now continue using the leaf shapes. The leaves fit into the small squares. I thought I would combine them together to make a flower shape. This way they fit right into the large square. And as you know, 4 large squares can fit on a square card. But with triangles on the corners and a so-called flower in the middle, you have a completely different sketch. I filled up the gaps using diamond shapes and small triangle shapes. Place in the heart of the flower a text, or just a hexagon. Here I have a card where I used the hexagon die cuts in combination with the hexagon background stamp from AlinaCraft. I've used the hexagon die cuts to make 2 flowers on a card. I made the die cut shiny, which suits the beautiful added gems. The hexagon background stamp is a little narrower than a card panel, but I made use of that by leaving the right edge white, which gives me a nice border. And of course I made a matching envelope. Here you can see the background stamp. The stamp is slightly discolored because I used the pink ink that soaked into the stamp a bit, but that doesn't matter for a later imprint. Okay, just a little joke in between. A windmill or a flower after all. The leaves lie flat against the hexagon. Another one, but notice the leaves. They are now pointing to the hexagon. Each point of the hexagon meets a point of a leaf. These flowers can also be spread all over the card, with a distance between each other, but also quite close together. I am making several flowers on purpose, so that you can see the different results. Different flowers on a card is fun too. And with some extra petals that function as leaves, the card doesn't need much more to it, apart from a sentiment. The petals can be spread all over the card panel in many ways, with banners in between if necessary. I'm just putting some here. I didn't die cut enough petals to fill the whole panel, For the following card, my credits go to Effie. She made a card with this sketch earlier as a demonstration for the QUILT Dies. Have you seen it on any of AlinaCraft's social media channels? I think it's a super cute retro pattern. I can't completely fill this one up either because I don't have enough die cuts, but you can already see how beautiful it will be. You can draw lines on the paper and glue the leaves in between. You could also, if you have a circular die, cut out circles with a diameter as big as 4 leaves together. And you can glue the die cut circles underneath for a nice contrast and also to help you glue the leaves straight. Maybe you have a template somewhere with circles that you can draw as a background, or else a round object, a roll of tape or glass with the same diameter. The drawn circles are then a guide or extra decoration for the card. The small hexagon dies unfortunately do not fit as a filler between the larger dies. They do fit in the small square, the way you buy them. And as I showed, they fit well with the hexagon stamp or as the heart of a flower. Had I had a stamp of a bee, I would have added it. But as you can see, by just putting a lot of hexagons on the card, you have already created the idea of a honeycomb. A picture or die cut of a leaf or flower and the text to go with it, and you have created another beautiful card. And now for the last card, which can again be made in different variations. It does not matter if you make a narrow European card or a wide American one, or even a slimline card. I make a star shape. Also nice for Christmas? This can also be made on the other side, and the text can be on both sides. The star shape will fit on a very large card, but it is no problem if you cut off the overhanging parts. So much for all the ideas I had with the quilt shapes. I'm sure there are many more. These 3 cards are made using the Right Now Romantic paper set. Such paper has the perfect thickness and the perfect matching patterns to make quilt cards with. Each pack of paper has 12 patterns with 24 sheets in it. And here I show again the other cards I made so far. Save this video in your personal playlist along with the previous video about making quilt cards. If you are on my channel Sis Volk, you will find it in the top right corner when you tap the information button. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel as well and hit the bell notification button. I'm really hoping to get more viewers. I need 1,000 subscribers to get paid by YouTube, so that would be awesome. Also, thank you for using my affiliate links. They cost you nothing and help you finding the products more easily. For me, making a video is a lot of work, so I hope you appreciate what I'm doing and support me. I'm very curious what cards you will be making with these QUILT dies. If you'd like, you can tag me on Instagram. I hope you have had a nice card making time with me, and I enjoy to see you next time. Bye bye!